Hello there, my name is Rachel. I can talk about animation, and today we talk about Okino, the inner chapter. Yeah, I think I said that name wrong. I'm so sorry. Just go with it. But besides that, this is basically a new anime from Netflix, and the question is, what is this show about? Is any good? Well, it's all about this sort of reverse gender back in 1700s in Japan that they sort of struck a sort of kind of plague of red pox. Not just pox, it's red for a reason. It's because the only people can attract this sort of illness is males between 20 to 30 age. They have a risk to actually contracting this illness. When you do have this illness, you basically sign your own death warrant because you're not gonna survive that long, only 2 or 3 days. After this, the sort of population of males went down. That meaning they had a lot of job openings to fill. The only way to fill it is sort of females, and they're sort of talking about this is could be wrong because it's sort of a guy job, not a woman's job. This could work, could not work, and it will lead up to even the maid garment who is in charge of this time period, wondering what we're gonna do next because it sort of affects everyone, and the way how each person deals with it is sort of interesting. Even that this series technically doesn't have a main lead. It's almost you just follow one specific person for that specific episode or that specific arc, sort of explaining scenarios they actually stuck to. But this sort of new era of change kind of created Okino, the inner chapter sort of change. This name is basically is the sort of kind of you can say harem from the daimyo or whoever's in charge to entertain them and select their sort of next, basically, disciple or another person to get birth to the next generation. In other words, but this was sort of interesting, and the sort of question is: should we tell the people our main lead or our leader died because of red pox? If we do, we start a new war. But at the same time, if we keep it in secret and keep it sort of small circles to understand, yeah, it's not the main charge. He passed away. We had to give it to a woman who actually is a young lady who is not yet fully developed, but trying to understand what she is. During this time, they developed a kind of new sort of harem for only guys, just for her, and you focus on that for a little bit. That became sort of a prison for a bunch of pretty boys who has a lot of different skills and a lot of different value each one of them, but they don't really have lives or see other people just besides them, and you get a little bit anxious and sort of the need to release yourself with another person, but there's no other woman, there's a guy, but the only problem is the youngest one gets to be the woman. Basically a prison. But that's not basically the main focus. Almost it's just sort of what this was created for. It's like it's what happens if the society sort of gender swaps and asks sort of specific questions. Why they decide not to tell people why the emperor died? Why keep the sort of specific name for only the mainly males, but also keep it to the females? Stay calling females, you call it still males as the title, and that's I think the makes focus of the series. That sort of questioning this is right and wrong or what is the proper way to do this. But if you do, everything you do is sort of connected to the government and sort of how life is sort of run in Japan. And the last lot of questions is, should we change now? Wait till later? This will affect someone. And it's just so interesting that it just grabs you. But at the same time, you feel pity for everyone because there is technically not a main lead. You just see specific people sort of struggling to adapt the sort of situation in understanding how this could work. If I'm doing it right, you think this wrong. Why are we keeping this secret? And I feel sort of fascinating that how a lot of women of this show became samurai, became basically chefs, because usually those specific jobs are more male leads, in other words. And now the women have to take in charge and do the same thing, but also argue with themselves like, are we sure this is the right thing? And that's just grab your attention because you don't know even they doing right because they never got taught. They had to read books or something like that just to understand. Also, we changed the some of the families sort of order like, well, the head father died. That means the grandmother's in charge, but the grandmother sure doesn't know what to do because he let his husband make all the choices. But you also have to work a farm, but we don't have enough guys. That means we have to use women, but we need more women because women are not as strong, but should be the right way. Or we should change a few patterns and make it a little bit more easier for us. And that's the thing, sort of grabs you. But a little bit is sort of the rumors that very beginning you think they say sort of something like, oh, remember this guy? And you don't know what they're talking about. Later on, they come back to when you realize, oh, it's this guy they're talking about because they go to the past and present. Like the very beginning episode is the present, what the sort of inner workings of the chapter sort of went down. They decided to close it because it's sort of unnecessary. And you kind of go 100 years later to understand why that was created and why it's so necessary, but at the same time it was sort of prison for pretty boys to reach the female leader in other words. And that's what makes it so just interesting because nobody sort of wins. They have a lot of questionable politics. They do, and sort of decisions sort of make sense why they make that sort of decisions. It's just sort of interesting. Of course, it's not the first time a show, book, anime, comic book, you name it, all type of entertainment use gender swap and explain how the world works because it's more women than guys. Especially they explain what happened to the guys because they're sort of limited to men. Then men became sort of like a fascist statement, like, oh yeah, I have a husband, yeah, not one but two husbands, and that's sort of interesting because guys now have to sell themselves because they need to repopulate the whole population, but at the same time you have to have some skills. You have to be good looking or do something specific. But also, kind of depends how your status is. If you're sort of poor, yeah, you're not gonna be healthy or strong or good looking or actually skilled or educated because you don't have the resources. So it's kind of hard to get a woman to give to the seat to you. And you see what I mean? It's sort of interesting how they go about it. It just sort of grabs your attention, even though I don't really have a main lead. I mean, you sort of do. You have the Empress, the new Empress, who tried to figure out what to do, how to get rid of this, how to change. Ask this question: why they just don't call me the Empress, but they call me the Emperor? That doesn't make sense. Why? And that sort of connects to the past. How she sort of kind of connects the dots. In other words, the decisions were made to make this decision in her perspective of the 1700s. That is, this is the right thing to do. Doing that like 100 year gap, like they make the right decision. In a way, it's more yes and no. It's complicated, and that's what makes this so interesting because it sort of give you a lot of questions that you don't know is the right answer. Yeah, I found that super interesting. You know what I mean? It's one of the shows that does grab you. But of course, I have to say it's not for everyone because there are some moments it could be a little boring or misunderstanding because if you're a Westerner, you'd be sort of confused because you don't know who is this is your title, what you can actually do, cannot do, you get confused. But don't worry, they do explain it well enough so you will not get confused, like why this person is so important, why this, why is that. They get explained, but at the same time, you need to know a little bit. You will get a little confused, especially you have like certain time period, a jump, like you see a certain character, certain point, and you completely change. You get confused till you hear their name, like, oh, okay, it's that guy. I get it, and so forth. Besides that, I have to say, I recommend it. Please watch the first episode. I mean, the first episode is like an hour and 10 minutes or hour and 7 minutes. That is super long, but engaging because it explains how everything went down. And basically, the first episode is sort of the ending of the series, so you can watch okay, this is the end. Why it sort of starts everything becoming this now? And they go backwards. They sort of jump in the past to understand what's actually happening. And that's sort of the fascinating thing that sort of grabs you. This is the reason you watch the trailer that doesn't really explain that much, because sort of a little bit of everything. That's the best way to describe it. It's one of those animes just so unique that it just grabs your attention, especially the gender swap. That's sort of hard to sort of, as I say, jump to a sort of position of a samurai to a male to a female. Even that you do have female samurai, but they don't call them samurai. They call them a different name, but they keep the gender name of a samurai. But once more, you still have the same basically authority, power. It's just sort of weird to see, but at the same time, if they don't do it correctly, you feel sort of awkward and bad and forced. And luckily, this show they didn't. Everything feels understandable because they do break it down pretty well. Now, I really can't say anything. It's something I do recommend. At least watch the first episode because it's just sort of a lot of world building. Maybe you like it, maybe you hate it. Honestly, I don't know. But I do recommend it. Now, I got nothing else to say. Just thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and have a wonderful day. Bye.